So maybe you've seen Dilara Casey in your LinkedIn feed. I don't know. I see her in mine all the time. It's because for nearly 2 decades, Dilara has been making waves in all things marketing. Right now, she is the head of marketing at Path Robotics. We're going to get into that and talk a lot about Path Robotics. Over the years, you might have seen her on Twitter, where she's gotten a lot of attention on from Huffington Post, Mashable, BuzzFeed, and on and on. Big highlights right there in your local community, and even larger with Columbus CEO Magazine, which is very cool. American Marketing Association. We know that one very well. And it goes on and on and on. Your work has been shown on the Today Show, USA Today, Politico, and Forbes magazine. Let's just pause for a second. How cool is that, right? How long ago were let's just say some of those accolades as far as the publications?
Probably like in the last 5 years or so.
Really?
Yeah.
So you woke up a morning, you were going to be published in
COVID.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for jumping on with us today and being one of our first conversations here on the Cole Evans podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I'm excited and grateful for the invitation to chat. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you thinking of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you obviously are one of the top voices on LinkedIn, which I always think is such a great accolade because it means that you're putting out a lot of content that a lot of people are engaging with, and it really just kind of checks a lot of boxes, right? And in a business professional community, it's a great place to be. So tell our audience a little bit about the journey, if you will, over the past, say, 5 years, as it pertains to your world when it comes to putting content out. Okay. And so just a little context for our listeners. This podcast is to help educate people wherever you are on the professional spectrum. Dilara and I were talking about this before we went live, that whether you are early stage in your career, you're just out of college, you're just getting started, you don't even know what this thing is all these old people are talking about, which is LinkedIn, no matter the other channels, right? I want to educate people on how they can create content and leverage content to, plant bigger seeds today for tomorrow's harvest is how I would say it. So tell our audience a little bit about your content journey.
Sure. Well, first of all, I have always felt like content's a part of what I've been passionate about. It was never recognized as that or called that until probably like the last couple of years, right? Of course. Storytelling, sometimes it was called marketing, sometimes it was called advertising, but at the end of the day, I just really love sharing content with people. And I think in the last 5 years, I've taken a really deliberate step in making sure that I am sharing all of the layers that make me up as a person, you know? And this is going out especially to working women and working moms. Sometimes our identity becomes really singular. It's what do you do for a living and how old are your kids? Those are like the only two things that we admittedly talk about because that consumes a lot of our life. So in the last couple of years, I've asked myself there's more to me than that. What can I share? And so I made a really concerted effort about 2 years ago to start posting on LinkedIn daily. I committed to doing that daily for 90 days. 90 days became a year. A year became 18 months. Here we are 2 years later. I don't post daily, but I post 5 days a week still on LinkedIn, just as a commitment to myself. And it's been really great. It's opened a lot of opportunities like this, but also, kind of shine the light to let everyone know that no matter where you are in your career, we're all still figuring it out.
That's exactly right.
Whether you're first year, graduate, just launching, whether you're a year away from retirement, we're all still figuring it out. So let's figure it out together.
That's exactly right. So let's jump over and talk about allocation of time. So when you started that journey, let's talk about how much time you were spending at the, once a day for 90 days, and then what that looks like today, a few years later.
Yeah. So originally, in order for me to really be engaged with what I was doing, I didn't plan out a content calendar. I didn't tackle this like I might tackle an established brand. I tackled this like I would tackle a non-established brand. Let's do some test and learn. Let's do some trial. Let's be really engaged and immersed in the channels that we're using. So I identified 2 channels for myself, LinkedIn and TikTok. That's where you'll find me 90% of the time. And so I made the commitment to post daily. And so nothing was scheduled. I woke up every morning and asked myself, what do I want to share today? What do I want to talk about? And just let the content go out into the world and see how people reacted to it. And I have to admit, it was welcomed with open arms. The scariest thing is starting. And
That's
so
right.
Just starting was that big step. And I thought, are people going to look at me differently? Are they going to think about me differently? Are they going to think I'm not in marketing anymore? Because a lot of my content is career advice. And so I was confident in my profile as a marketer, my position as a marketer, and this helped me establish another leg in my conversation of, helping someone with their career. So did that commitment. After about 6 or 8 months, I was tired of waking up at 6 every morning and writing a post. So I did start to review some of my content and understand what was performing well, what was resonating the most with people, and use that to start scheduling things. So I was scheduling about a week at a time, again, allowing myself some flexibility and nimbleness to pivot my conversation based on any news that was coming out. And now today I sit down once a month for about an hour and I schedule my posts for the month based off of, historical experience with other content,
Sure.
things I see coming down the headlines. And I do leave wiggle room every week to post something new and fresh and to have insights. And then I check in daily to see how engagement's doing.
So that's very interesting. I hear you talking about batching content, and I interviewed Brittany N. Cole, and she was talking about she, like yourself, is a top LinkedIn voice. She's got a huge following, and she puts out a lot of content just like yourself. And so I was having a conversation with her, or doing this podcast, we're having a great conversation. And she was like, "Yeah, I make a lot of space for things that are in the moment, or that I want to, that I have passion about, that I want to get out and post." She said, but a lot of my content was shot over a 2-day period. She shot 21 podcast episodes in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Created an event around it, and I can't stop thinking about it or talking about it. I'm like, oh, why have I not done this? But to that exact point, getting in a batch situation, right, where you can get a lot of energy and time into the output. Let's talk about, so that was allocation of time, and I appreciate you going through that. Tell our audience a little bit about what you're finding works on channels. One of the notes I wrote here, which is very true, whether you're looking at a website that I've for 20 years, or in this next statement, which is people love people, right? They want the team page on a website outside of the homepage, the #1 viewed page on every website I've ever been a part of. And so I'm interested to hear when you say, and I love this, my wife tells me this on a very regular basis, and you hit the nail on the head in the very beginning, which is women are, kind of cloaked over and looked at in a different way, and kind of given these different titles professionally. And so I think you hit a big point there on sharing the layers. To your point, when you're sharing layers, you're showing not the cleanest background that you could show, not showing, right? So, but people love the authenticity. Tell our audience a little bit about what maybe got your attention when you started going down that layers path.
Yeah, so I think for me, when we're talking about channels, I think with LinkedIn, I'm a little bit more deliberate in my content, just because I do plan it out. I can schedule things. It's written text. I could throw a video or photo in if I want. But on TikTok, it's like, look, I've got 6 minutes to film a 3-minute TikTok video. I didn't brush my teeth today, and I just have something really important I want to say. And it's funny because I'd say most of my highest performing TikTok content is like I'm wearing a sweatshirt, my hair is in a ponytail, and I have no makeup on. So I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to have this like clean background. I have to have, and at the end of the day, I think the more genuine you come across, the more relatable the content is. And so, if I have this like great idea I want to share, I'm not going to take a shower and do a blowout on my hair and put full face makeup on and, make sure the lighting's right. Like, I need to get this idea out there. I need to get this thought out there. I need to share this now. Like, this is like itching in my skin and I don't want to forget it. So I want to get it out now while I'm thinking about it. And so I've felt that, or I've learned that, some of the most like curated thoughts I have actually don't perform as well as the thoughts that I have just like running through my mind.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And
so I do keep a tube of lipstick at my desk now, though, just to, just in case, but I don't put any much more thought into it than that, though.
It's interesting, Dilara, that you mentioned, there's kind of this line, right, of I find, and I'll say most people, of the comfort of staring at, the camera or looking at the unpolished version of yourself looking back, if you will, but and knowing, whether you know it or not, it's true that the algorithms love the unpolished. They absolutely love it. The raw in the moment, to your point. I love that. Let's talk about what channel or output has worked for you. So I hear you mentioning TikTok. I'm interested to talk about how Path Robotics and heading marketing up for a Path Robotics company and talking to a younger base channel like TikTok. I'm interested to hear
Mhm.
your angle there,
Yeah.
and tell
Yeah.
our audience a little bit about just what channel. And again, there's no right or wrong here for our listeners. What
Mhm.
channel is right for you? And I don't mean channel as in I do actually mean on channel LinkedIn or Instagram, et cetera, as in your current world because I think it'll change tomorrow. But what output? Is it designed? Is it graphics? Is it raw video to your point? What are you seeing as when you
Right.
go back and I look at all the analytics on all the channels? It's like, this is what the data is telling me back that people really love.
Right. So I think you make a really good point that you still have to pay attention to data at the end of the day. Like, go with your gut to get started. Start. Just start. Start. Do something. Throw spaghetti on the wall. Start. Right. Because that's how you get data. So I think sometimes people do like, paralysis by analysis. They overthink
Oh yeah,
things. They
sure.
feel like they have to build this like robust brand strategy, and it's like the 6 months it took you to build that robust brand strategy, you have 6 months of data that you could use for
Yeah,
that
that's
direction
right.
instead.
Right.
So number one thing is just to start. The number two thing I think is if you try to be everything to everyone and be everywhere, you will be nowhere.
Yeah.
You will be your worst enemy in creating churn around having to deliver content on multiple channels. It'll stress you out. It'll dilute the impact of your content. And, if you know who your audience is and you show up where they are
Hmm.
with the message they need to hear, you've won the game.
Yep, that's right.
So I think sometimes people get into this spin like, well, I just got to be on Facebook. I've got to be on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I've got to be on Instagram. I've got to be here, 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 here. My advice is pick two channels and give it 3 months
I
and
love
see
that.
how it works. Evaluate your data at the end of the day. And you know what? A lot of times you will see the audience that maybe you thought you were hitting might be there, might not be there. That's fine. You've learned something, right? And so, like, with my personal, like, top voice stuff, that's on TikTok and LinkedIn predominantly because that's what's working for me when I'm talking about like the career coaching and marketing consulting I do for brands. We have a different roadmap
Sure.
because with our brands, we have a more established, ideal customer profile and how to access them. But like when I was starting out, admittedly with the career coaching, I thought I want to go after, young millennials and older Gen Z who are launching into their career. And I'll be honest with you, they didn't they didn't want my business. Like they didn't want to work with me. They didn't see the need for
Right.
um my offering. And so I learned that really quickly. It took me 3 months, but that's a really fast time to learn, hey, I'm going to pivot my audience. And the moment I pivoted my audience, everything just ignited. Everything ignited. So you have to be willing to admit that maybe your first hunch might not be accurate
Right.
and have the confidence to pivot and be nimble and try something new. And I think with at Path Robotics, we're doing the same thing. We're understanding how different channels are performing for us. We are a B2B robotics manufacturing company. Like we have a lot of layers to what our offering is.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's like there are only there's a pretty niche group that we attract. And
Sure.
so we've got to find where they are. And that takes some test and learn. And we have the patience to do that because we know that as part of that test, we are learning. And when we learn, we move forward.
So obviously you're going to be biased because you're already in the space that is artificial intelligence. But tell our audience a little bit about whether it is the Q-tip brand of GPT or whether it's one of the many other platforms that are honestly, I think coming online every single day in the world of AI. Tell our audience a little bit about specifically our marketers, maybe even leaning into leadership and business owners to a degree, but how you're leveraging AI in your world, not specifically on Path Robotics. I'm sure that's a whole different
Right.
level. But how are you
As a
doing it
marketer.
as a
Yeah.
marketer? That's right, to take your content on the channels that you've talked about, from the stages that you've talked about to a couple of years later. How is that now, even in the past 12 months, kind of
Yeah.
gone to another level?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to really make a strong statement that AI, as far as I'm concerned, will never replace a human being. What it does is it enables us. It enables us to increase our bandwidth. It enables us to think about things differently. It is a tool in toolbox. And I think if people are intimidated by a tool, they'll never use it, right?
Right.
So I encourage people to just like play around with it and see what works for you. And so for me, I found AI is really good for like thought starters around content. What are 10 things I should be talking about for XYZ topic? And it'll give you 10 ideas. And you know what? 6 of them might be garbage, but there's 4 in there, and it just saved you some time and it gave you a little bit of direction on where you can go. I know a lot of people lean really heavily into AI to actually write things for them, from top to bottom. And I put a little bit of a yellow flag up there because AI, the first word's artificial, right? So there isn't like a genuine tone that comes across. There isn't that level of like authenticity or connection that you read when you read content created by an AI resource. So I do recommend, use it as a starter. Like if you're making soup, this is your base. This is your soup starter. You can like add in the vegetables and ingredients that you want to make it have the flavor that you're looking for. But I wouldn't just use it off the shelf and plug it in. For me, ChatGPT, everybody loves it. That's like the first, iteration. Everyone uses that. I've actually found a lot of really great AI configurations on Canva that I love.
Really?
So yes. So just to give a really easy example, when I'm working on a brand strategy and I'm creating the brand archetype and I want to give people like a visual of what the brand voice would look like if it was a person, Canva has a really great plugin that you can use to create like a person. So you can say like, I want like a middle-aged guy who does this, and it'll create like a couple different visuals.
Oh, that is cool.
And also, and they also have some AI content writing support in the app as well. So I think that Canva's got some really cool stuff that people probably don't even realize is there.
While this episode is definitely not sponsored by our friends at Canva, I'll tell you, I've done a complete turnaround. And maybe this has been like this for years, and I've just been in a very naysayer tone for a few years. But Canva used to not be good. Let's just be real. And then right now, I have like the pro version of it. I love it. Like it has some of the best templates. So, but to your point, creating those AI elements in there, I'll have to get in and nerd out on that. But they have really taken their game up to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and when you look at almost any marketing tool, maybe I'm making a broad assumption here, but when I'm looking at a lot of the marketing tools I'm using, they are starting to have AI plugins ingrained in them. And so my advice is try it. Worst case, it doesn't work. Then you go back to using your brain for everything. But the goal of using AI and leveraging AI is for me to increase your bandwidth and like deepen your bench a little bit. So it doesn't replace you. I think it really helps complement areas where you might need help without having to, find another resource or spin wheels on trying to find another resource that can help you. So I am obviously, the company I work for is AI enabled, but I think holistically, I think, AI is here to stay.
Yeah, sure.
I think people are intimidated by it because they don't know how to use it. And once you know how to use it, it makes life easier,
Okay. So I'm going to peel back the layers on one of your things, because I think you answered this next question, but I'm going to make you answer it again. So lastly here, we're kind of wrapping up, but I want you to give a couple of tips and tricks. Okay. Tips and tricks. So some kind of go-to things. I'm listening to this podcast. This is what I'll put on the thumbnail of the YouTube video, right? But what is that thing where I'm like, I just got that from the podcast. What's a couple of tips that you would give to a general audience about content, period?
Okay. Only talk about things that you feel comfortable talking about. If it's something that you could talk about nonstop for a half hour, that's an area of content you should consider using.
That's
you know what I mean? If you go to a party and someone's like, Dilara, tell me about marketing, and I could talk your ear off for 2 hours about marketing, then I could probably create some good marketing content.
That's exactly right.
I think if it's something that you like to talk about, that you genuinely enjoy, I think that's a really great thing. The other thing about content too is like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And when you do own it, just own it.
That's so true, Dilara. So many people don't realize, it's such a good point. So many people don't realize that they think the feed that they see on whatever channel or whatever, whether they're watching TV, whether they're listening, honestly, I think we believe as a society that everything that comes at us, maybe not so much today as maybe 5 years ago, but is true. And that the person talking is a subject matter expert, and they are the expert. And the truth is, I think we all know when you look behind the curtain a little bit, it's just not true. And there are a lot of subject matter experts, right? Or
self-proclaimed
20-year-old life coaches, whatever the situation is. But the point is, to piggyback on what you said, is for someone who hasn't gotten started, that is sitting there in a skill set. I'm talking to plumbers, right? I'm talking multi-location business owners. You've been there for, let's just make up a number and say 8 years. Okay, I'll just make it up.
Yeah.
You have something to say, right? And being able to
Right.
harness that on a channel and an output that makes sense, there are people out there that want to hear your story, no matter what that story is, I found.
Right. Right. I agree with that. And I think if you have and I hate to put like a number on it because I do think there are really smart people who are young. They're super
Oh,
bright. They're super
absolutely.
intelligent.
Yeah.
But you also have to put some value on years of experience
Hmm.
and years of lived experience.
Hmm.
And I think that that lived experience, knowing that it's transcended so much change in our world, even like you said, the last 5, 10 years, like so
Right.
much has evolved and changed. I think that there is a value in what you have to say when you've had some lived experience. And I think because you've lived it, sometimes you don't think it's valuable, but guess what? It is. So I encourage people to give yourself a little more credit of your lived experience that you have and the insights that you might take for granted that are interesting to others. And again, like the stuff I'm sharing right now with you, like might be a gold mine of information for someone, but for me, it's common knowledge because I've
Yep.
lived it. So I think that's another thing I'd encourage people. So yeah, like don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to be human. The other big thing, just start. Just start. Start. The worst thing you can do, the worst regret you'll ever have is not starting.
That's exactly
They
right.
always say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, right? So
I saw a
start
post this morning
today.
that said, "A year from today, you'll wish you would have started today." And I was like, "That's very, very,
Exactly.
very timely." Thank you so much for your time. I'm hearing you say authenticity is key. You've said pick 2 channels and give it 3 months. And if you can talk for an hour, that's what you should be talking about. Dilara Casey,
Yep.
thank you so much. If you want to follow Dilara and all the channels that we've talked about today, check out all the places where the text are on whatever channel you're looking at, and click and definitely follow her journey. Dilara, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to chat today.